In the summer of 1914, Europe was at the peak of its glory. Empires controlled the world, and technological progress promised a new era of prosperity. There was great confidence that civilization had reached its highest echelons, and the idea of a major war was a thing of the past. But beneath this calm surface, fires were smoldering. The continent was like a powder keg, needing only a single spark. And with that spark, a blaze was ignited that left nothing but ashes. For years only, but it was enough to change the face of the world forever. World War I was not merely a conflict between armies. It was a struggle between systems, ideologies, and progress. It was a war that killed kings, toppled empires, and laid a new foundation for the world we live in today. We will delve into the depths of this conflict, not just to narrate the events, but to analyze why and how it all happened. Before 1914, the world did not exist in a political vacuum. The European continent was like a large house of cards, where each card supported the others. Any small movement in one corner was capable of causing a complete collapse. This house was built on a complex system of secret and public alliances, each designed to maintain balance, but ultimately leading to immense instability. There were two main powers: the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia. None of these nations wanted a total war, but they were all prepared for one. There were deeper reasons than just alliances. There was fierce economic competition, a frenzied arms race, and a rising sense of nationalism across the continent. Each empire believed that its military might and colonial control entitled it to dominance. Britain feared Germany's growing naval power, and France never forgot its loss of Alsace and Lorraine to Germany in a previous war. The spark that ignited this powder keg was a single moment in the city of Sarajevo. On June 28, 1914, a Serbian student named Gavrilo Princip assassinated the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Princip was not just a student. He was a member of a Serbian nationalist group, and the assassination represented a broader conflict over Serbia's sovereignty. Austria-Hungary saw this as an opportunity to settle scores with Serbia. This is where the alliance system began to work slowly, then with frantic speed. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia intervened to support Serbia. Germany intervened to support Austria-Hungary, which triggered a reaction from France and Russia. Finally, when Germany invaded Belgium to reach France, Britain entered the war. None of the leaders expected this sequence to lead to total war. They thought it would be a short war, ending before Christmas. But it was just the beginning of the end. When the war broke out, everyone expected it to be a short one. Generations who had not witnessed a large-scale conflict imagined that the fighting would be noble and would end with a swift and decisive victory. But reality was completely different. As the armies entered northern France, everyone realized that the overwhelming firepower of modern weapons had made a direct assault suicidal. This is where the new generation of horror was born. The Western Front was transformed into a vast network of trenches, which became the main stage for death. The fighting was no longer in open battlefields, but in muddy tunnels and filthy swamps. Soldiers lived and died in these trenches, trapped between the enemy and what became known as no man's land, a desolate, open space crisscrossed with barbed wire and bomb craters. Any attempt to cross it meant almost certain death. And this horror did not come from the trenches alone. It came from technology that had outpaced military tactics. Machine guns reaped hundreds of lives per minute, making traditional foot assaults a form of madness. For the first time in history, poison gas became a terrifying weapon that sowed fear and dread in the hearts of soldiers, leaving them to slowly suffocate. Heavy artillery became capable of firing shells weighing hundreds of kilograms from long distances, turning battlefields into massive bomb craters. This was industrialized warfare at its most brutal. Battles like the Somme and Verdun fully embody this horror. On the first day of the Battle of the Somme alone, Britain lost 60,000 soldiers, its largest single-day loss in military history. In Verdun, the fighting lasted for over 300 days, turning the land into a swamp of blood and destruction. Yet no real strategic progress was achieved. The war had turned into a struggle for a few meters of ground, paid for with hundreds of thousands of lives. While the world focused on the devastation on the Western Front, this war was silently spreading to every corner of the globe. It was not a European war. It was a truly world war. In the East, the Eastern Front was the stage for huge and wide-ranging battles between Russia on one side and Germany and Austria-Hungary on the other. The battles there were less static than the trench warfare, leading to immense human losses on both sides. The Middle East was not immune to the conflict. The Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers, opening new and important fronts. In these harsh deserts, the British and Arabs fought against Ottoman forces, with the goal of controlling trade routes and natural resources and ending Ottoman control over the region. It was these battles that shaped the political map of the entire region after the war, thanks to agreements like the Sykes-Picot Agreement. At the same time, the conflict was raging beneath the ocean waves. Germany was effectively using its new submarine weapon to cut off British supply lines. Initially, this conflict was limited to warships, but as the war continued, German submarines began targeting merchant ships as well, arousing the anger of neutral nations, especially the United States. This was the factor that would push America towards war. The United States had followed a policy of neutrality at the start of the war, but the sinking of American ships by German submarines, in addition to the discovery of the Zimmermann telegram, in which Germany planned to ally with Mexico against the United States, radically changed American public opinion. In 1917, President Woodrow Wilson declared America's entry into the war, stating that its goal was to make the world safe for democracy. America's entry into the war was a decisive turning point, as it provided the Allied forces with vast human and economic resources they desperately needed. With America's entry, the war was no longer just a conflict between European powers. It had become a world conflict in every sense of the word. The war had reached its peak, but with the arrival of fresh American troops, the balance began to tip in favor of the Allies, and the old empires that had started this war began to collapse. After 4 years of hell, the firing finally came to an end. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed, ending the fighting. The world celebrated the end of the Great War, but the joy was mixed with deep sorrow. The human cost was horrific. More than 8 million soldiers and 6 million civilians died, in addition to millions wounded and mutilated. These were entire generations lost in the mud of the trenches. After the war, the leaders faced a new challenge: building a new world from the ashes of the past. At the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, which aimed to punish Germany and hold it responsible for the war. The treaty included harsh terms, such as paying immense reparations, shrinking the German army, and losing territories and colonies. Some believed this treaty would bring lasting peace, but others, including economists and experts, warned that it was sowing the seeds for a future conflict. World War I was the inevitable end of the era of empires, for massive empires collapsed: the German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian. New nations emerged from their ruins, radically redrawing the world map. In the Middle East, this war led to the emergence of modern nations like Iraq and Jordan, based on secret colonial agreements. But perhaps the most profound impact of the war was the psychological and social change. The immense suffering and unprecedented destruction led to a state of disillusionment and hopelessness. This was the fertile ground in which extremist ideologies, such as fascism in Italy and Nazism in Germany, grew. The harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles were the fuel that ignited German resentment and paved the way for a leader like Adolf Hitler. It was not just a collapse of empires, but a collapse of traditional morals and values. World War I was a war from which no one escaped. It was the end of an old world and the beginning of a new one, full of doubts, wars, and questions. It proved that technology could be as much a tool for destruction as for progress, and that humanity had not learned enough from this hell. It left us with a legacy of conflict that will continue to shape our destiny for decades to come.